Hello everybody, Maven here. In the past few seasons, ever since the launch of Lightfall, Bungie has completely shafted us on Stasis. There's been no Stasis love. But finally, next season, season 23, we're gonna get some Stasis support. So it's time to get our meta Stasis builds ready. So in preparation for that, for today's video, I have brought to the table the most meta Warlock, Hunter, and Titan Stasis builds to showcase off for you guys so you can get them ready. So let's get to it. Don't forget to drop a like and I hope you enjoy. Alright, so the new season and supposedly the Stasis meta begins in 2 weeks. So if I had to choose one Stasis build to play for each class in this season, that's what this is going to be about. But just a quick disclaimer, I did do 2 separate build videos for 2 of the 3 builds that we'll be showing off in this video, and that is the Renewal Grasps Hunter and the Osmiomancy Warlock. So I will link those videos down below in the description if you would like to see those builds explained in much further detail. Because obviously, since we got 3 builds to go over today, they won't be as explained as in depth. And just one more note before we break down the builds, because I know some people are going to suggest things in the comment section, but these builds are geared towards end game content, because I'm sure there's a lot of cool Stasis builds you can do for easy content, but these are meant to be end game viable and strong in that sort of area. So even for this video, I did Grandmaster Lightblade on all 3 of these builds just to show that it is very viable for GMs and stuff like that. So with that, let's break it down, starting off with the Hunter. So without a doubt in my mind, by far the strongest Stasis Hunter build is going to be Renewal Grasps. These things just got unnerfed, which we'll talk about in a second, but your Dustfield grenades have a much larger radius, and while within the Dustfield, allies take reduced damage and enemies deal reduced damage. So the whole point of this build is to be able to spam Dustfield grenades like pretty much every 5 seconds, and that is not an exaggeration. And that gives you great control over the battlefield, being able to freeze and shatter everything that you want to. Also gives you some good damage output as well. Easily one of the top 5 Hunter builds in the game, in my opinion. So let's break down everything that's contributing to our grenade regeneration, because that is by far the most important thing about this build. So typically when you play Stasis Hunter, you run the aspect touch of Winter. This makes it so your Dustfield grenade is a little bit bigger. It makes a little baby crystal in the middle so that you can proc Whisper of Shards. Shattering a Stasis crystal boosts your grenade regeneration rate for 5 seconds, and if you stack it on top of each other. And when you have the Renewal Grasp, it turns a little baby crystal into an actual full-size crystal. And then we got Whisper of Torment to give us grenade energy every time we take damage from combatants. And then we have a lot of great methods of grenade regeneration on our mod setup as well. So when we dodge, we're proccing Bomber and Outreach so we get some grenade and melee energy back. And that's also proccing Reaper, so our next weapon kill is going to make an Orb of Power. So when we pick up that Orb of Power, proccing Innervation to get some grenade energy back. And then we have Impact Induction on our class items so that when we cause damage with a melee with our Stasis Shuriken, it also gives us some grenade energy. But the most important method of grenade cooldown here is going to be Grenade Kickstart. So that's just going to give us a huge chunk of grenade energy back after using our grenade, but even more so if you consume more stacks of armor charge as you proc Grenade Kickstart. So that is why we have a copy of Charged Up on our chest piece so that we can hold up to 4 stacks of armor charge instead of 3. So now our goal is to just get that 4 stacks of armor charge as quickly as we can. And with this setup here, it's going to be extremely easy. So first off, like I said, Reaper on the class item, dodge, and our next weapon kill gets an orb. We got Arc Siphon, and we are running arc weapons with this build, so we make orbs that way. But the biggest way is going to be Elemental Charge on our boots. So collecting a Stasis Shard gives us a chance to get armor charge. But all these methods are going to give us 2 armor charge because we have stacks on stacks. And the way we're going to create all these Stasis Shards is via the aspect Grim Harvest. Defeating slowed or frozen combatants creates Stasis Shards. And that is extremely easy with the Dustfield spam. And these shards are just heat-seeking to our position with Whisper of Conduction, just funneling in all that free armor charge. It's a very good system. And our last method of grenade energy is within our loadout. We have the Witherhoard, the Iterative Loop, and the Song of Iriute. This is my loadout of choice with this build, but of course if you're doing tough content, you can easily just swap out the Witherhoard for something like Wishender so that you can cover all the champions. But generally I prefer the Witherhoard because it's great to pair along with the Dustfield grenades, because you trap enemies within the Dustfield so that you also trap them within your Witherhoard. It's a very great synergy. Now these weapons are going to help us regenerate our grenade energy because they have the Demolitionist perk, so they give us grenade energy on final blows. Now the Iterative Loop is a fusion rifle, so it actually gives us 20% grenade energy back on final blows, whereas most other archetypes give us 10%, like the Song of Iriute, for example. But we are pairing the Song of Ute along with the brand new Sword Logic perk to help us slay out a little bit harder. It's a pretty solid damage perk and is basically our primary weapon with this build. So that's why we are running double specials. And also our iterative loop has enhanced lead from gold on it. So when we pick up a heavy ammo brick, we get some special ammo as well. That's why we have a copy of heavy ammo finder on our helmet, because even if we grab a finder brick, we're getting a chunk of special ammo as well. So with the combination of these solid demolitionist weapons along with every other method of grenade energy I already just talked about, that's how we're able to spam dust-filled grenades about every 5 seconds to just completely control the battlefield. Now real quick about the other ability of Renewal Grasp, when you're standing in your dust field, you're actually 25% tankier, but if you also have on Whisper of Chains and you're standing next to that crystal you created, you're actually 40% tankier. So it's a very solid build because the key to a strong endgame build is survival. And that is pretty much the build explained in a nutshell. Now speaking of ad control and territory control, nothing comes close to the power of Osmiomancy Warlock. Gives you a second Cold Snap grenade charge, and everybody knows to just use these to be able to spam Bleak Watchers because they convert your grenade into that stasis turret to slow down the battlefield. So having 2 grenade charges really helps, and that's really all it's for. But it also gives you infinite Cold Snap grenades too, because if you make impact with your Cold Snap grenade at a target, it pretty much fully refunds your nade. That was the whole point of the Osmiomancy build video I did a while back. If you want to go and check it out, I had this cool clip at the beginning of it against Carl where I was just spamming my Cold Snap grenade at his face just to show that you pretty much have infinite Cold Snap grenade charges. And that is something that a lot of people tend to overlook, because when they see the Osmiomancies, their mind immediately goes to stasis turrets, but it also just gives you infinite Cold Snaps as well. Now don't get me wrong, the Osmiomancy gloves are probably unarguably the strongest stasis warlock build just generally, but also don't sleep on the Verity's Brow. The Verity's Brow in a lot of situations can recharge your Bleak Watcher turrets a lot faster than Osmiomancy's can. You have to get takedowns with weapons that match your subclass element, so you can easily just throw on an Aegir Scepter and a Chain of Command or something like that. It has Demolitionist, that also helps recharge your grenades and easily gives you stacks of death throws. And when you have these stacks, your grenade regen and your allies' grenade regen are greatly increased. But not only that, the only reason that we're running Cold Snap grenades in the first place is because the Osmiomancies gives you a second charge, but the Bleak Watcher allows you to convert any grenade into a Bleak Watcher turret. So with the Verities, we can actually throw on the Dust Field, which have a much quicker base cooldown as well. So you pair that along with death throws with a Demolitionist machine gun that is stasis, and yeah, it's on. You get those stasis turrets back extremely fast. Now let's showcase off a little bit of gameplay while I break down the rest of the Osmiomancy build. So in a lot of ways, it's very similar to the Renewal Grasp Dustfield grenade build because it's just another build dedicated to getting our grenade back as quick as possible. So we have the same setup with the Witherhoard, the iterative loop, and the Song of Ute that we already talked about, along with a copy of Arc Reserves in the chest. And we do have the same sort of grenade kickstart with charged up stacks on stack setup with Innervation with Reaper on the class item and Arc Siphon. It's the same setup we just talked about with Hunter. Although for the Warlock, if you are doing tougher content, you can take off charged up on the chest and just run resist mods instead. Because it's definitely a little bit harder to get armor charge with Warlock than it is with Hunter, because we're kind of relying on orbs because we don't have elemental charge on our boots like we do on Hunter because we're not running a stasis shard setup. Instead, we're running Ice Flare bolts because it's just so good. Those stasis turrets are freezing everything, so whenever we shatter them, it just spreads even more Cold Snap grenades from target to target to target, just chaining freeze all over the place, and that helps the theme of the territory control. Now here's a quick little snippet of the rest of our fragments, and I'm going to tell you right now that Bomber spam is pretty relevant on Stasis Warlock for a couple reasons. One being Whisper of Refraction. Defeating slowed or frozen combatants grants you Rift energy. But not only that, because we have a mod called Bolstering Detonation that says that you get Rift energy whenever you cause damage with a grenade. So whenever your stasis turrets tag a target, you're also getting Rift energy as well periodically. So that's just going to allow us to spam more rifts and spam Bomber on our boots. It's good for survivability and grenade energy. And here's a quick snippet of my stat setup if you're curious how I got it distributed, and that is pretty much Stasis Warlock wrapped up in a nutshell. Now, one last thing I forgot to mention about Stasis Hunter and also Stasis Warlock is that you can easily deal with all 3 champions with these builds without having to run a single anti-champion weapon. And that's because Stasis slow stuns overload champions, Shatter stuns unstoppables, and if you can manage to keep a barrier champion frozen constantly, then they'll have a tough time putting up their barrier because they'll constantly get frozen out of it. And with the Duskfield spam and the Stasis turret spam, you can easily deal with all 3 champions. So that is one great benefit of running Stasis in endgame content. They're just champion killers. And one last thing I forgot to mention before we move on to Titan is that an alternative strong loadout for this build and also the Hunter build is to run Wish Ender and a Wendigo. Like if you need some damage, but you also need some range, you need a primary, you need barrier, you got that as well. For the Titan, this one's probably a little bit more debatable, but in my opinion, the strongest endgame Stasis Titan build is going to be the Cadmus Ridge Lancecap, but I can see making an argument for Heart of Inmost Light as well. So the Cadmus Ridge Lancecap makes it so when you get rapid precision hits behind a rally barricade or combatant final blows, you get a diamond lance spawned right near you, so that you can just pick it up for free. Now, the most important thing about the Cadmus Ridge Lancecap is it says that diamond lances create stasis crystals on impact, and that is very important for a couple reasons. So not only is that crystal going to be pretty strong because of Whisper of Fissures to increase the damage and size of the burst, that also works for our Glacier Grenades as well, and especially along with Whisper of Rending to make our stasis crystals shatter in one primary shot. Our crystals are pretty good, and we're also boosting our grenade regenerate with Whisper of Shards when we break that free crystal from our diamond lance that we get from the Cadmus Ridge Lancecap. But also Tectonic Harvest is benefiting off of this as well, because shattering a stasis crystal creates a stasis shard. Stasis Titan by far has the easiest time making stasis shards than any of the 3 stasis classes. Shattering stasis crystals is so easy to do, so we can just toss a glacier grenade at the floor in front of us and place our barricade on top of it to break it and get a bunch of free crystals. And that allows us to revert back to what we were doing on Stasis Hunter and run elemental charge on our boots so that we can just get some free armor charge whenever we want it. But unlike Stasis Hunter, we're not using this armor charge for things like Grenade Kickstart. Instead, we are using 2 copies of Stasis Weapon Surge along with the copy of Time Dilation, so our Stasis weapons are going to have a constant 18% damage buff. Now, this is going to be very good for our Wicked Implement. That's right, this is a weapon that you don't see too often, but it has very good synergy with Stasis Titan and especially the Cadmus Ridge Lancecap. So when I did my tier list video last season ranking every exotic primary in the game, I ranked Wicked Implement extremely low. I thought this weapon was trash tier, and it's still not the most amazing weapon unless you use it on this build, but the Catalyst is what makes all the difference. It gives it Headstone. Headstone is very, very great for Stasis Titan, but also collecting Stasis Shards overflows the magazine by a large margin. And with the combination of our Glacier Grenades and our Cadmus Ridge Diamond Lances, we can easily overflow the Wicked Implement whenever we want so that we never have to reload it. But also, the other ability of Wicked Implement says that rapidly landing precision hits causes targets to become slowed and eventually frozen because you are causing slow stacks to happen. And when you do this, you also create a stasis shard that yeets across the map to you, overflows your magazine, procs things like elemental charge. But also the other reason this has great synergy is because it wants rapid precision hits. You know what also wants rapid precision hits? Cadmus Ridge behind a rally barricade to give you a free diamond lance. The synergy is crazy good. And it doesn't take too many precision shots. It's only like 3 or 4 shots really. It just gives you free diamond lances. It's actually pretty solid. But that is definitely the kind of thing you do in tougher content where you're actually going to take the time to sit back with the rally barricade, because there's not really a ton of situations in which you would actually do that. So personally, I prefer the Cadmus Ridge Lancecap just for the sake of creating stasis crystals on diamond lance detonations. That alone has very great synergy with what Stasis Titan is all about. And by the way, the Wicked Implement alone is capable of dealing with overload and unstoppable champions, because those creeping attrition slow stacks it applies on precision hits. Remember, slow stuns overloads, and eventually you'll freeze and shatter to stun unstoppable champions. And quite often in many seasons, we get the artifact mod anti-barrier scout rifle. So if that's a thing next season, then the Wicked Implement can alone deal with all 3 champions. But this is honestly a weapon that you would use in tougher content where you gotta keep your distance. So in all honesty, if I was doing easier content, I would easily pick the Unending Tempest. With Enlightened Action and Headstone, this I found to be a very solid headstone ad clear weapon. Honestly, I've been having a very great time with this weapon. It definitely slays out pretty hard for an SMG and a Stasis one at that. So Enlightened Action is a brand new perk out of this season, so some people might not know what it does off the top of their head. So it says that dealing damage gives you bonus reload speed and handling. Now apparently according to D2 Foundry it stacks up to 5 times, but in game the stacks are hidden. I really wish Bungie would fix that in the future, and they said they're going to do some UI changes, hopefully that's one of them. So because I'm running a Stasis loader and pair that along with Enlightened Action with Flared Magwell and a Reload Masterwork, and this thing reloads blindingly fast, making it even better for ad clear. So I'd highly recommend trying to get your hands on this roll for a Stasis build. And I'm sure a lot of you guys have probably reset Shaxx multiple times this season because of Igneous Weekend and Iron Banner. So just go over to Shaxx, focus a ton of Unending Tempest, maybe you'll get this roll. And for my special weapon of choice with this build, I am running the Explosive Personality, but you can run whatever auto-loading wave frame grenade launcher that you want. I just prefer the Explosive Personality, it's one of my favorites. And it's always great to run a wave frame whenever you are running Stasis crystals. It has very great synergy. You just shoot the wave flame at the floor in front of the crystals, the wave will go through all the crystals and break them all and cause a huge AoE damaging burst. And for my heavy of choice, I am running the Cataphract with auto-loading holster and bait and switch for damage. Although if you were not running the Wicked Implement and you're running the Unending Tempest and doing easier content, that frees up your exotic slot. So you can easily just run something like an Anarchy or a Gallarhorn or whatever your teammates need you to run. And one last little note about Stasis Titan before we move on is that when I have a Diamond Lance, you'll sometimes see me doing this movement tech where I toss it but then also plunge down to the earth. And let me show you how to do that real quick for those who don't know. So the Diamond Lance has 2 different moves. You can either throw it or you can just plunge down to the earth with it, but you can combine the 2 together. And to do that, you just have to throw the lance, but immediately after, press the button to slam down to earth. And you can just combine the 2 together. And Bungie has never fixed it, and I don't think they ever will. So it's just some cool movement tech to know about when you use Diamond Lance. So here's a quick snippet of the rest of my fragments, and then here's a quick snippet of the rest of my mod setup. Nothing too significant to talk about here, just got a bunch of resist, loader, ability spam stuff, bomber outreach and whatnot. And then here is my stat distribution. And that about wraps it up for our Stasis builds for today. Coming next season for the Stasis meta, I believe that these will be the best builds for each of the classes. Like I said, I can make an argument for other things as well, like Verity's Brow Warlock and Heart of Inmost Light Titan. But, you know, these are generally what I feel are going to be pretty solid options. But when it comes to Hunter, no doubt in my mind, Renewal Grasp is by far the strongest thing that you can do. Now, obviously, we don't know what Stasis artifact mods and or Stasis buffs will happen next season. We just know that they will happen. So this video is all kind of a hunch at the moment, but we will have all the information in next week's TWID, most likely. Because usually at the last week of the season, Bungie reveals all of the artifact mods for the upcoming season, so look forward to that. And as always, I'll leave a dim loadout link to all 3 of these builds down below in the description and also the pinned comment if you would like to give them a try. So that's gonna do for the video. I hope it's helped and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to hit the like button and drop a comment, because interacting with the video in different types of ways like that really helps out the algorithm. I'd appreciate if you clicked on something. And if you are new here, please consider subscribing. Would love to have you here, especially with all the content coming in the new upcoming season. We're going to be going crazy. So hope to see you there. And with that, I will catch you in the next video. See you later.